In the early 1990s, we seemed to be standing on the cusp of a breakthrough in technology. Perhaps inspired by decades of science fiction, from Ray Bradbury to William Gibson, something called virtual reality promised to whisk us off to digital realms more colorful and thrilling than our own. A system called Virtuality captured the media's attention near the start of the decade. By wearing a cumbersome helmet and manipulating a joystick, you could play games like Dactyl Nightmare, a 3D shooter where a dinosaur flickered and swooped above your head. This nascent technology seemed to capture the imaginations of writers and filmmakers everywhere. Suddenly, movies like The Lawnmower Man and Disclosure were appearing in cinemas, each presenting us with the possible ways virtual reality might change how we interact with each other, or warp our perspective of the everyday world. The past year or so has seen virtual reality once again grab headlines, with devices like Oculus Rift and Sony's Morpheus either available to buy now or coming out in the near future. With this being the case, we decided to revisit the virtual reality films of the 90s and try to rank them in order of quality. 12. The Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace, 1996. The original film star Jeff Fahey was sensible enough to turn down this tawdry sequel, so he was replaced, in an inspired bit of metacasting, by Matt Frewer, previously famous for playing AI character Max Headroom in the 1980s. Unfortunately, the creative inspiration ends there, as Job hatches another tedious plan to take over cyberspace. The one proper link with the previous film is young actor Austin O'Brien, who returns to play the now teenaged Peter Parkett, Job's old next-door neighbor. The sex, violence and chimps with guns of the original have all been airbrushed out of this more child-friendly sequel. Grant Morrison was even approached to write the thing at one point, and Beyond Cyberspace loses the last shred of its so bad it's good charm as a result. 11. Brainscan, 1994. My memories of this horror flick are a little hazy, but maybe that's because years of playing 90s video games have turned my brain to mush. In fact, Brainscan warns of the dangers of exactly this kind of behavior. Edward Furlong plays Michael, a horror movie, video game-obsessed teenager who ends up trying out a new VR game. We dare you to experience the most frightening game on this planet. An advert for the game, called Brainscan, reads: "Unleash the dark side of your soul. Enter the game more real than your reality." Michael's sucked into a virtual realm that looks almost exactly like his own cozy suburban community, except here he's cast in the role of a gloved, knife-wielding serial killer. Goaded by an unseen narrator into entering a house, killing the occupant and hacking off his foot, Michael emerges from the game horrified yet exhilarated. Then he notices that an uncannily similar murder occurred in his neighborhood. And worse, there's also a severed foot lying in his freezer. If all this sounds very dark, that's because it was written by Andrew Kevin Walker, who also wrote 7 and 8 mm. Unfortunately, his screenplay was altered before shooting with a hokey, sub-Freddy Krueger-style villain written into the film. Actor T. Ryder Smith admitted as much on his website. As a result, what we get is a largely forgettable, reactionary remake of Videodrome. The message seems to be that retreating into a world of comics, games, and heavy metal rather than going out with your friends really will turn your brain to mush. Or worse, prompt you to hack off a neighbor's foot and keep it in your fridge. 10. Arcade, 1993. With its straight-to-video budget, this sci-fi thriller's CGI is more Sega Mega Drive than Jurassic Park, but there's something quite endearing about this cut price drawn for the 90s. A group of kids heads to a local arcade to try out the latest in VR entertainment, only to be trapped inside the game by the spirit of a little boy. The game, it turns out, is powered by the brain cells of a deceased kid whose ghost torments anyone daring to play it. With a premise like that, penned, brilliantly enough, by David S. Goyer, you can't help but warm to arcade just a little, iffy graphics and all. Also, look out for John Delancey and a young Seth Green among the cast. 9. The Lawnmower Man, 1992. You know you're in for a wild ride when a sci-fi thriller opens with a scene shot from the perspective of a chimpanzee. Pierce Brosnan plays Dr. Angelo, an archetypal mad scientist who thinks that human intelligence can be expanded via a heady cocktail of virtual reality video games and injections. Unfortunately, his experiments on a chimp leave the beast running around with a gun in its hand. Undeterred, Angelo continues his research on Jeff Fay's intellectually impaired gardener, Job Smith. After a few weeks on the doctor's chemicals and VR training regime, Job M.